Yes, hello. I know that the holidays is over, but I got a spooky holiday story about Navy Pier and the Winter Wonderfest. Come on, my babies, it's story time. Boom boom, it's story time. Boom boom, paranormal Chicago activity with Cat G. Hey y'all, hey. I know that the holiday season is over, but I want to talk about Navy Pier and the Winter Wonderfest. If you've been in the recent years, like COVID years, it is nothing, absolutely nothing like what it used to be. Navy Pier Hall A was done up to the nines, okay? It looked like Santa Claus' whole village just came and took a shit everywhere. There was so much to see and do at the Winter Wonderfest. They had like over 200 Christmas trees, and each of the Christmas trees was like represented by a different country or a different culture. Then another year, they had decided to do all of the Christmas saints. The Christmas trees always had a different theme. You hear what I'm saying? But something that never changed was all them rides, the bouncy houses, the food, the hot chocolate, the ice skating. Oh my God. Winter Wonderfest was one of those highlights of the winter. I don't know what the hell happened because Winter Wonderfest at Navy Pier didn't went to shit, baby. I was so mad when I walked in there this year. What the fuck is this? You want me to pay how much for what? No. I'm going on down the street to Jack's. Thank you. P.S. Side note, for those of you who don't know, Jack's is a really cool place. They got axe throwing, go-karts, you could like mine for gems and jewels, beautiful bar, cute little picture moments. It's a real nice date place. So if y'all ever was looking for a place to go, Jack's, look them up. They got like 3 different locations. Anywhoosie, back to the story. We gonna focus on the rides from the old Winter Wonderfest, okay? I had a friend, his name is D. He used to operate those rides. It was one ride called the hang glider. It literally looked like a hang glider. You lay down into the bed of the hang glider and that motherfucker spin you all the way around. Baby, I loved it. I am a thrill seeker. Now, we had a couple of good managers who would let all the workers act a fucking fool and just run amok in the Winter Wonderfest once we shut down for the day. And this was one of them days, baby, when I tell you, it was as if a child spirit took over everybody. Everybody was sitting around shaking. We wanted to play so fucking bad. Y'all done seen my videos when I be sitting back trying my best not to go and bother this man because something then took over me and I want to fucking play. Multiply that by 200. We was on 10. And ain't nobody drink a liquor. Now I'm talking about all of us sober as children, playing, frolicking through the trees. As I'm on a hang glider for like the 4th time this night, this one particular time, homeboy turned it up, okay? We is swinging, bitch. And here's the thing. When you spin in a circle, you know what you do to yourself? You can open up your own portal. The more we spinning, the higher we going, the more I'm starting to see spirits standing around watching our ass. See, here's the thing about Navy Pier. This bitch big as hell, okay? People really don't realize how big it is until you work that. It is terrifying. It is so big. In Hall A, where everything is, like where you playing around at, that's fucking huge, okay? But if you look up and towards the walls, you would see that there's actually a walkway because it's a whole nother set of rooms and offices and all kind of crazy shit on in the back of there, right? Now, the whole walkway go around the whole entire H Hall. Every inch of the walkway is covered by a ghost from some type of... Hold on, I'm gonna go. The men's is, they look like this, okay? They look like this. The women's look like this. And now I'm terrified because what's happening? What's happening? I shouldn't be seeing flapper girls. And seeing how I showed y'all that, let me show you the ride that we... This thing right here, baby, the hang glide ride. What? Now you imagine going at the speed of light in this, and you get to see it go. Horrified, terrified, petrified, all of the ads. That's what I want. I yelled that man middle name so fucking loud, he hit that emergency stop button so quick. Now, when it come down to do one more whoop around, I guess that's how it engaged the damn brakes. Now, when it whoop back around, I'm right next to D. He look at me and he take off. Bitch, I'm crying. I'm crying. He say, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, you don't see him? You don't see him? You ain't see him? You don't see him? He said, girl, what the hell are you talking about? What's wrong? I need you to talk like a normal person. You gotta breathe. You gotta breathe. You gotta breathe. It's like, oh, it's on a walkway. We hope it not pour it. Y'all, at that point, I was asthmatic as fuck. Whoa, child. Listen, don't smoke a blunt outside when it is negative temperatures. You will fuck up your lungs. I did not know that. I learned it the hard way. He's not even paying attention to what the hell I just said. He's now mad at me because I'm having a full-blown asthma and panic attack on this goddamn ride. I feel an energy pressure. Like, first and foremost, I feel like I'm really finna die this time. My lungs are a little bit too close, bitch. We getting a little bit too close to the pearly light. I get a high-pitched frequency in my ear. I know I shouldn't look, but goddamn it, curiosity, okay? Curiosity be trying to kill this cat, and it almost got me. I looked over, just one little peek. All the ghost people eyeballs is red. Oh no. At this point, my heart rate is so fast that I'm pretty sure it could beat Sha'Carri Richardson. She ain't got nothing on how fast my heart is beating, girl. You can move them legs all you want to. My heart is done. D say, don't look again. Don't you fucking look again. You know how you be shaking because you're scared, and then all of a sudden something that's super, super scary stop you and you like. He said, don't look. I squeezed my eyes shut so hard it felt like my eyelids was gonna bust open. Nigga, you ain't gotta tell me twice. You ain't gotta tell me. I said, D, what's happening? D, what's happening? It ain't me. It ain't me this time. It's you. It's you. Why would you play that fucking song while we spinning in a circle? You know what it do. You know what it do. He said, no, it's you, you fucking star child. You the catalyst. You the one who ignites. I do this shit all day, every day. Nothing wrong. You come get on my ride, everything fucking wrong. Bitch, what you say? You got me fucked up now. That was another mistake that I made. It was another mistake. Oh, I opened my eyes. I opened my eyes, and it was a ghost man right over his shoulder. D get to throwing out mantras. I'm talking about he throwing them because he know I just seen what I just seen. Ain't nobody swapping. You leave my body alone. You leave my body alone. I don't want to be possessed. Okay? Just go find somebody else, please. I put my hands flat down on the ground, and with every bit of positive intent I could possibly muster in my being, I say out loud, Holy Mother, come deliver me now. They trying to get your girl. And just then, like a beacon of hope, here come Miss Barbara with her motherfucking air horn. Bam, 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 bam. Time to go home. Energy pressure, gone. Saved by the horn. Hallelujah. Boy, I got the fuck up and I flew to Miss Barbara. Miss Barbara looked at me. She looked at D. She looked back at me and she said, girl, don't you fucking move. Matter of fact, take these damn bells. Miss Barbara had a copper bracelet set with copper bells on it. If you don't know, it's a protection ward. Baby, when I tell you I was jingling, jing, 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 all the way the fuck home, yes, ma'am. And I ain't even go all the way home. On the way down the block to my house, I got a Puerto Rican family that adopted me. Baby, I knocked on the door. I don't give a fuck if it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Wake your grandma up. Tell her to come bless me, please. Y'all know the protection knock. Her auntie opened the door. She looked at me. Like, she literally looked me up and down. She said, take your ass to the shrine. Thank you. Because it tried to get me. It's trying to get me. Who else can say that they was haunted at their job by ghosts from the 1920s because they trying to body swap and live in the land of the living again?
Let's talk about spirits that look like people. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. Now, the title of this email is The Time My Friends Saw Me Inside. So let's get into it. The person who sent me the story did not specify if they wanted to be anonymous or not, so for obvious reasons, I'm going to play it safe and keep them anonymous. So the person who sent me this email is from a very small town, and in the small town, there is an abandoned building that is supposedly haunted that used to be a school. And if you're from a small town, then you know these haunted places are like magnets for children to go and hang out. And I say children, but I really mean like high school age kids. Anyways, her and her friends decide to go and hang out at this building and try to investigate and gather evidence. And at some point during the night, they decide to split up and go opposite ways. Now, it's important to note that this building is always locked and is almost impossible to get inside of, which I also want to note is very, very common with these haunted places in small towns. They lock them up like Fort Knox. They really do. Anyways, the person who sent me this email says friends are looking for her for like 15 minutes because they're ready to go. As they're walking around the building, they suddenly see her, the woman who sent me this email, inside the building. But here's the kicker. Her friends say that it was her looking at them through the basement window, only her eyes were not her eyes. They were just very dark. And when her friends were asking her how she got inside of the building, she said, just come inside and we can talk about it. Finally, her friends decided to leave the property and find the person who sent me this email about a block away. And she's asking her friends where they went because she couldn't find them either. And that's when her friends explained the whole situation and them seeing her inside of the building. Obviously, at that point in time, it's debunked that it was not her inside of the building, and it was someone else or something else. And all I'm going to say is this. That would be the first and the last time that I ever go to that building. Because I had a very similar experience at the haunted place in my hometown, that is also a pretty small town, and that was the first and the last time I ever went. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Do you think sleep paralysis is scientific, or do you think it's paranormal, or both? Because this sleep paralysis story that I'm about to tell you absolutely terrifies me because it seeps into the real world, and those are the kind that scare me the most. So we're going to call tonight's submitter Sasha, and Sasha said that there's been something going on in her house that's really scaring her, and she doesn't know what it is, and she wants our advice. When her and her family moved into the house about 9 years ago, there was this creepy porcelain doll in a box in her basement where her room is now. There's also a huge crawl space that goes from her room to the other side of the basement. Now, it started off with sleep paralysis experiences. She would have sleep paralysis almost every single night from the time she was 9 years old to 13 years old. She would fall asleep, she would be laying there, and she would wake up. She could not move at all. She would look over in the corner of her room, and there would be these tall, horrible, dark figures that were clear as day standing in her room. And she said that they didn't just stand there. So this next part is going to be hard for me to describe because I don't want to get in trouble. So basically, she is asleep one night. She wakes up in the middle of the night, and she looks over, and she can't move. But as she's looking over, she sees this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of her room. It slowly, very slowly, starts walking over to her bed. Then it gets on all fours and it crawls up onto her bed. It then sits so that it's very hard for her to, when you have to like breathe in and out oxygen. As this is going on, and she's kind of freaking out because sleep paralysis already makes it hard for you to breathe, and then it makes it even harder for her to breathe. So this is obviously terrifying her at this point, but she doesn't know what to do about it because it's happening every single night. Well, one night she falls asleep, she wakes up in the middle of the night, and she is like, great, I am having sleep paralysis again. So she opens up her eyes. She's expecting to see these tall, dark figures in her room, but that's not what she sees. She sees her mother standing in the corner of her room, but she doesn't look quite right. And she's just staring at her like this, just staring at her. And she isn't moving, just staring. Now, after staring at her for a couple of minutes, and she's horrified at this point because she's like, I'm looking at my mother right now. What is going on? And her mom starts walking very slowly over to her bed, super awkwardly. And then she lifts up her body and starts floating horizontally on her stomach. And then she floats above Sasha, like she's literally floating above Sasha like this. And as her mom is floating above her, staring into her eyes, her mom's mouth just goes like that. And she's just has her mouth open like that, staring at her daughter or whatever this thing is. And then she just shifts into one of those black figures that she always sees standing in the corner of her room. It's no longer her mother. It's one of those black figures floating above her with its mouth wide open. She said that this one really scared her, but that these things continued to happen. Then she said that the worst sleep paralysis incident was one that didn't feel like sleep paralysis at all. She said that she was sleeping and she wakes up in the middle of the night. She opens up her eyes and directly in front of her face is a little girl. And it was clear as day, she said. Like clear as day. It did not feel like sleep paralysis. And this little girl was wearing this beige dress and she had long black hair with no face. The face just basically blended into her hair. It was like a black hole that just blended into her hair. And Sasha blinks and the girl is just gone. She said that after this experience, she rarely has them anymore. That was one of the last ones that she had had. But then things started getting worse in the real world. She said that one day she woke up in the morning this time. She was able to move and she gets out of bed. She's changing and she looks at her leg and there is a mark on her leg. A mark that looked like somebody went to her leg so hard that it left like a 5 fingerprint mark on her leg. So this really scared her because obviously she didn't do it to herself and she doesn't remember it happening. And for a mark to form like that on your leg, you would feel it and remember it, right? Well, later on that night, she goes to bed and she can't fall asleep because she starts hearing in her closet, like someone is scratching the wall in her closet. Now, her closet is the crawl space. The only thing that separates her room from the crawl space is the closet, and there's only a curtain hanging there. Now, she said that after she's hearing these scratches, she can't figure out what it is. It's really hard for her to fall asleep. She finally falls asleep, and the next morning, she wakes up with scratches on her. While it's been many years since she's had sleep paralysis, because it was when she was 13 years old, she's starting to experience things in the real world now. And she's wondering if these things are connected and what is going on because it's scaring her. And she has no idea what to think it is. Do you guys think that the sleep paralysis is connected to whatever's going on in the real world with her? Because I kind of do. What do you think it is? I think that it's definitely not good, whatever it is, obviously, if it's leaving marks, you know. I'm actually not allowed to give any advice anymore. Just, you know, I know that I keep saying that I'm gonna post and I promise you that I am going to. It's just been so chaotic for me lately. If in the next few days you notice a day I haven't posted a story on here, just know that I'm getting really frustrated with this. I can't do anything. Tell me what you guys think of this story. What do you think it was? Comments, suggestions, thoughts, drop them in the comments. And as always, please be respectful.
I lived in Chicago up until I was almost 5. And I was born in Rio Piedras, Puerto Rico. And my parents moved over there. I was probably like 2 years old. And I have a crazy good memory about a lot of things. And I remember around almost 4, my parents and I went to a flea market in Chicago. And we went with my brother and we were just, doing thrifting and all that other good stuff, when you don't grow up with all the money in the world. And I remember telling my parents I wanted a balloon so bad they bought me this damn balloon. So that night my parents were going to bed. It's freezing cold and my brother had such issues in Chicago. That's the main reason why we moved down to Miami. He would cry because his bones hurt so bad from it being so cold. And so that night my mom comes and she ties this balloon to the post of the bed. We had a bunk bed and we shared one, and I had the top bunk. And she leaves, whatever, they tuck us in, whatever, my mom and my dad. So cool. This balloon is tied to the bedpost. In the middle of the night, my brother starts crying because he's in pain. And as he continues to cry, I'm telling him, shh, Tito, be quiet, please, because we're going to get in trouble. Because my dad was a typical Puerto Rican grumpy old man. And he's like, but it hurts, And I'm like, shh, don't cry, don't cry. So I remember getting off the bunk bed, trying to see if he's okay. And he keeps crying because he's hurting. So I'm like, oh my God, we're going to, get in trouble for being up late. So I get back on the top bunk and my balloon unties and floats away. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, when you're like 4 years old, everything is stressing you out for no reason. And I'm thinking to myself, he's crying. I can't get no sleep. The balloon is floating around. I'm going to get in trouble for, because you think you're going to get in trouble for all kinds of stuff at 4. When the door opens and I'm like, oh no, we're in trouble. And I see my mom come in. But I remember her coming in kind of like gliding into the room. And I go, mommy. And she goes, shh. And I was like, okay. I'm like, mommy, Tito's crying. He's hurting really bad. And I remember whispering. And she goes, shh. So she bends down. And I remember looking at her from my bed, like looking over, thinking, my mom looks a little bit transparent. Like, why does she look like that? She was wearing like a bluish color bata with like these little frilly things. And I'm watching her and she's taking Vicks and she's rubbing it. We're Hispanic, everything Vicks fixes everything. She's taking the Vicks and she's putting it on my brother and she's telling him shh. She's not speaking, she's not saying shit, but shush. That's all she's saying is shh. So she basically shushes him to sleep, like calms him down. He falls asleep, he rolls over, and she gets up and I go, mommy, my balloon. And she's like, sorry, I ended up with a phone call. But anyway, so I'm watching her and she comes over to me and she's telling me shh because I'm excited, like my balloon is floating away. And she grabs the balloon and she ties it to the bedpost. And again, I'm like, thank you, mommy, I love you. And she goes, shh. And I'm thinking to myself, why does she keep telling me shush? Like, she's frustrating me. And she floats out the room. So I got out of the room the next morning. I'm like, mommy, excited to tell her thank you for making him quiet because he was so loud. I go, mommy, thank you so much because, you put the Vicks on him and he went to sleep right away and da-da-da. And she's like, what are you talking about? I go, mommy, last night you told Tito you gave him the Vicks and you made him feel better and he went to sleep. Thank you. And she's like, I wasn't in your room last night. What are you talking about? I said, yes, you were, mommy. You were in the room last night. You came in the room. You told me to shush. You told me to shush a lot, mommy. And then you took my balloon and you tied it to the bedpost and you put Vicks on Josh. You put it on him. And she's like, no, Ginger, I was not in your room. I was asleep. And I remember looking at her like she's messing with me. Like there's no way that she wasn't in my room. But as I kept looking at my mom and remembering the lady that I saw, I'm like, they look the same, but something was off. So then she's arguing back or saying, no, little kid, like you sound crazy. Like I wasn't in the room last night. And I said, okay, mommy, okay. And like she's serving me food at the table. And I just remember when my mom turned back around to go to the sink or the stove or something, it's when it dawned on me that my mom's hair was longer and the lady's hair was like super short. And I'm like, okay, who the hell was in my room? This lady literally comforted me, comforted my brother, put Vicks on him, put the fucking balloon on the bedpost, and just floated off. And I never said a word because I'm a little fucking kid and I'm thinking to myself, this is fucking weird, bro. So that was my very first encounter with a spirit that fucking young and that impressionable, because I will never forget how this lady just floated away out of my room.
About 15 years ago, me and new friends were playing some game. I think it was a manhunt or ball tag, and the sun had just dipped over the horizon. It was that weird time when an open area with nothing blocking the sky. You could see reasonably decent, but the woods were dark. So, playing a game where hiding is the main objective, me and one of my friends climbed a hill and dipped just into the shadows of the trees. We lay there, in a sort of divot, and the ground heads peeking over the lip, watching our other friends search the area for us. We could easily see them. All then out of nowhere, in the woods behind us, we hear this music. My buddy describes it as a marching band, but that doesn't really fit. It was like a steady drum, like you would hear at a Native American ceremony or celebration, and something that may have been singing or chanting, and I think the instrument is called a rain stick, with the subtle sound of a large group walking. And this is the part that confuses me. It was just what I previously mentioned. I could have explained it away with the history of the land and the tribes that once lived there, but there was one more instrument mixed in with the music that if I heard it in any other setting would have been a beautiful melody, but given the setting and the harsh and unmistakable sound of the bagpipe, it got louder and louder, and then as suddenly as it started, it vanished. Terrified, me and my friend jumped up from our spot and bolted towards the safety of the yard that still had slight visibility. Our other friends, who were standing and staring in our direction, the direction of the music, ran towards the houses. Before we hit the ground, as we jumped the steepest 9 to 10 foot at the bottom of the hill, we spent the rest of the night talking in hushed whispers of the experience. If you love spooky stories, go ahead and give me a follow. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you have any scary stories you would love to share, send me a message. I can't wait to hear them.
Bodies of water have souls. They carry energy and they warn you if something's not right, according to one woman named Maria, who shared her story about having a strange experience with a woman in the middle of the night on a beach in Michigan. Last night we did a story about mermaids or sirens and someone who claimed that his dad was on a mermaid hunt. And this story is kind of in the same vein. If you're new here, this is Spooky Scary Storytime, the series where I share listeners' allegedly true stories about the creepiest or most unbelievable things that they've never shared before. Maria said that for years she spent the majority of her free time rock hunting and looking for treasures along the beach in South Haven, Michigan. She lives about an hour away, but she often drives there when she needs a little break. And she's known to stay out past midnight. She'll walk around with a UV light, she'll look for little treasures, and she's found a lot of cool things. And even though she stays out late, she's really never had a creepy experience, or bad feelings, or fear of being alone. But 2 years ago, all of that changed. Related side note, I grew up going to South Haven, Michigan, like every summer. My best friend's family had a little cottage there, and we would go and we would spend the week. And it's such a cute little town. If you're in the area and you've never been, you should definitely go and check it out. I can attest to this next part in the story where Maria says that she can feel an energy every time she's there. And in her head, this energy is a she. She says because she respects the beach, she's been presented with all kinds of treasures, including fluorescent sodalite, the size of her head, beach glass, uranium glass too, and all sorts of fossils that date back millions of years. She said there's times when you can tell that she's angry, Mother Earth, or whatever you want to call it. She says she doesn't know if this is from the pollution, all the people on the beach leaving trash, pollution from the boats and the nearby power plant. But either way, every time that she feels like she's angry, not necessarily at her, but from people, she feels like she gets a warning. She feels like it gives her signs, like a rogue wave coming from nowhere and getting her wet when she didn't want to get wet, or the beach and the wave is coming up and stealing whatever she was trying to grab. Of wind out of nowhere that knock her off her feet, millions of bugs, you get the idea. She said 2 years ago she went out to one of her favorite beaches to hunt for treasure. It's called Pilgrim Haven, and she doesn't know a lot about the history of the land prior to it being like a public beach. She does know that the land was owned by like a church camp at one point. Before it was a natural area. She said she's been out there at all hours before, even at like 3 a.m, and she's never gotten an eerie feeling before. She's seen deer, foxes, coyotes, all kinds of animals, and she's run into a few rogue people, but nobody that ever gave her the creeps. They usually had backpacks or buckets or metal detectors. Like they were out there doing the same thing that she was doing. At night, she made the drive at about 8:30 p.m., got there and started looking for treasure. It was a cool late summer, early fall night when she got there. It was already dark out. She was wearing a headlamp, and she could tell there were storm clouds in the distance, like enough clouds in the sky to block out the light of the moon. There was also a ton of lightning, but it was way off in the distance and it wasn't raining yet. So anyway, she gets down to the beach and she said pretty much as soon as she started looking for treasure, she started getting this feeling that she was being watched. She scans the beach, but she doesn't see anybody, and she tries to shake off the feeling, puts her head back down, and walks along the beach scanning for rock. But as she made her way down the shoreline, the feeling was still so overwhelming that she found herself basically looking over her shoulder with every step. That she couldn't even focus on what she was doing, and after like 45 minutes or an hour, she just decided, like, I'm not supposed to be here right now. It's time to pack it up and leave. She said is super unlike her. She didn't even walk the whole beach, and in all of the years of her doing this, she had never turned in early.
But on the way back to her car, her headlamp dies. By the time she makes it back to the concrete path that leads up off the beach and back into the parking lot, she's using her UV light to lead the way. Walking up the concrete path almost to the parking lot, she looks up to shine her UV light where the curve is to the parking lot, and she's surprised because there's a woman standing there. She wasn't moving, she didn't have a flashlight, and she didn't give Maria any kind of response when Maria said, "Oh shoot, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to blind you," because she had accidentally shined her light in her face. The woman didn't smile, didn't bat an eye, didn't look at her to make eye contact, no facial expression, just standing there with her arms at her sides, staring out at the water. From what Maria could tell, she was a middle-aged woman with dark hair past her shoulders. She was wearing mom jeans and like a dark hoodie, white tennis shoes, but no gear, just standing there staring, arms at her side, not even acknowledging Maria at all. Obviously, Maria's a little startled, but she doesn't think much of it. She's just like, okay, this woman's out here enjoying the scenery in the middle of the night, just like me. She continues walking up toward her, and as she does, the woman starts walking down the steps the beach, still staring straight ahead at the water. They passed on the path, going in opposite directions, shoulder to shoulder, but Maria said she didn't feel any kind of wind or like movement of air between them like you would when you normally walk past that close to a person. Maria didn't make eye contact as she passed her, and she could tell the woman kept her head straight ahead also. Maria said she took about 4 more steps, and then curiosity got the better of her, and she turned around to see the woman, but there was nobody there. That when she realized the woman was gone, every hair on her body stood on end because there was nowhere for the woman to go. There was no trees, no brush, just sand in one direction and water in the other. She said she hightailed it from that point back to her car and then saw that her car was the only one in the parking lot. That was strange too because she said this natural area is at the dead end of a road with about 5 or 6 houses on it. She tried to reason with herself and thought maybe she lives in one of these houses, but it wouldn't make sense because she would have had to pass her to get back up to the road. She said the experience scared her so much that it took her almost a full year to go back to that beach. But a year later, she decides on her birthday she's going to go back and she's going to face her fear because this is one of her favorite beaches. She had a pleasant experience. There was no strange feeling of someone watching her. A stranger there with no expression and no light to greet her. So the next night, she decides to go back again. She says anyone that lives in the area will tell you that Lake Michigan can change in seconds. And so when she goes back the next night, there's huge waves and howling wind. Said she got down to the water and all of a sudden had that strange eerie feeling of being watched again like she had a year prior. This time it felt comforting, like whatever it was wanted her to know that she was being watched, and then she realized that she could hear singing in the wind. That I can't explain it other than it sounded like a sea shanty or siren type song, but the entire time I was out there it never stopped. No matter which direction she walked, it was always the same distance from her, and it almost sounded like it was coming from somewhere above her, and she said she just got this overwhelming sense that the lake or Mother Earth or she was protecting her from something else that would have happened that night. I'm not sure what, but that's what my gut tells me, and I don't frequent the beach as much late at night now after that experience with that woman. That I can still see her face clear as day. I can still see her expression or lack of one, and anytime I remember it, it gives me goosebumps. Maria wanted to know who you think was watching her that night, so let her know what you think in the comments. She'll be seeing them, and if you have a story that you think nobody else would believe or that you've been too afraid to share, send it in here. You found your community.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. These are some of my true paranormal stories. The first experiences I can remember were inside my great-grandparents' house. I already don't like this. After my great-grandfather passed away, I would stay with my great-grandmother often. She lived completely alone. We would hear knocks on the doors and walls late at night. That would be the last time that I would stay with grandma. So sorry to tell you, but absolutely not. And I grew up with a grandma that had creepy dolls all over her bedroom, and I stayed there all the time. I loved it. Now that I think about it, my mom actually has a story of when she was a kid of knocking coming from an empty bedroom. I'm gonna have to ask her to give me the details so that I can share with you guys, because I remember her telling me that story and I was like, oh heck, oh absolutely not. We would hear knocks on the doors and walls late at night. Footsteps and whispering. Pots and pans clanging. Okay. The thing is that whatever is there wants to be known. It wants you to know that it's there, and so it's making as much noise as possible, and that just, it really creeps me out. Is the clanging of the pots and pans completely necessary? I think we probably could have left that out, considering that you're already knocking on the walls, walking around, whispering amongst yourselves. I was only 4 or 5 at this point, so she assured me that it was just my grandpa and to not be scared. She would sometimes talk to him in a jestful manner. I didn't fully understand because I was so young. She passed away a year later. We moved into the house after that. Oh, okay. The house was built in the 1930s. It was only 2 bedrooms originally. I had one room to myself. My little brother and sister, who were twins, had the other room. They were barely a year old, still in their cribs. My mom and her third husband slept on a hideaway bed that folded out from the couch. My bedroom faced the living room where they slept. My door faced out where the couch was, so I could see them sleeping while laying in my bed at night. I had a large closet in my room and a metal frame bed. The first week we moved in, I began to experience things. I would be awoken by noise and see a shadow moving around in the living room. I would get scared and cover my head up and try to go back to sleep. I would hear something in the closet regularly. I hate this. Imagine just being a child, okay? You're just trying to go to bed. Can't because there's something in the closet. Can't because actually there's a shadow figure just creeping around outside your door. Sorry to disturb your sleep. Time for the fun part. One night I was awoken by bright lights. Lights so bright, my first thought was someone is parked in a car in front of my window, but that's impossible. One night I saw a figure, best described as the opposite of a shadow person. This is the second story that we've come across that we have seen these like figures, but they're light. They're not shadows. Interesting. I still need to look that up. It was bathed in light, standing over my mother. Some nights I would hear scratching or tapping at my window. Oh, no. Some nights I would hear scratching or tapping on my window. I hate that. One night my metal bed frame started shaking ever so slowly. What do you mean? Then a little bit faster and more erratically. Like some faint type of force was just shaking it randomly. Oh, I hate that. Shortly after that, I had my first experience with sleep paralysis. I told my mother about it the next day, and she admitted to having the same experience. What? She described it as a shadow man with a hood over his head, holding her down and sucking the energy out of her. What is happening in this house? Genuinely, what is going on? This was in 1997 and we didn't have the internet, so we had no idea this kind of thing was common. Oh my God. I have lots more stories, especially after I became a teenager and moved into a different room in the house. They're gonna make part 2, so we're gonna have to come back to this. Oh my God.
It's said that at least one point in all our lives, we're supposed to encounter a skinwalker, and I am not ready. Some urban legends are just stories, but these are the ones that keep me up at night. There's an urban legend in the American Southwest that people are literally afraid to speak about out loud. Not because it's fake, but because they believe that saying its name gives it power. It's called the Skinwalker. The legend comes from the Navajo culture, where a skinwalker is believed to be a witch who gains the ability to shapeshift by committing acts so dark they violate every spiritual law. Skinwalkers aren't born, they're made. According to the legend, they can take the form of animals like coyotes, wolves, or deers, but something about them is always wrong. They move unnaturally, their eyes don't reflect light correctly, their limbs bend in ways that animals shouldn't, and one detail appears in every single reported encounter: the voice. People claim skinwalkers can mimic people's voices perfectly, calling your name, imitating loved ones, or even calling for help. But they don't chase people, they instead lure them in. Across the Southwest, hikers, divers, and even regular people living near the reservation report eerie, similar experiences. Hearing their names spoken in the dark when no one else was around them. Seeing animals stand on 2 legs for just a few seconds too long. Feeling watched, like intensely watched without nothing being around. Many Navajo elders refuse to discuss skinwalkers publicly, believing that speaking about them attracts attention. Even among paranormal researchers, the similarities between unrelated stories are so unsettling. Different people, different locations, but the same story. And here's what makes this urban legend extremely disturbing and keeps me up at night. Skinwalkers aren't treated as monsters, they're treated as warnings. Warnings to avoid certain places at night. Warnings to never answer voices that you cannot see. Warnings to trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Because according to the legend, once a skinwalker has your attention, it doesn't need to follow you because it already knows where you are.
Let's read another true and scary story. This story is called While Hanging Out at an Abandoned School, Me and My Friends Stumbled Upon Something. This is going to be a rather lengthy story, so please bear with me. Back when I was in my early to mid-teens, around 2007 to 2008, me and a bunch of friends would regularly hang out at an old abandoned school. A very small school with only 8 classrooms, a teacher's room, a cafeteria, 2 bathrooms, and 1 room we had no idea what was in since it was always locked, but I'll get back to that later. Most of the place was boarded up completely, but you could enter a window in one of the classrooms where the board had been ripped down. Our routine was always the same. Whichever of us got off school first would go down to the building and go through the different rooms to make sure everything was empty and safe, as this building had earlier been known as the local spot for drug addicts, and used needles and such was a common sight for us by this point. So this one day, me and a friend of mine were the first to get out of school, and as per usual, we take the walk down to the building. But upon entering and stepping out from the classroom and into the hallway, we immediately see a large man. I remember him as quite huge, but that might possibly be how he appeared to us as kids. And my friend lets out a huge scream. The man doesn't appear shocked or scared and doesn't seem to react to us, but he turns to look at us and then he asks, "Have you guys seen, insert my friend's name here?" We tell the guy that we haven't seen anyone and we only just got there, to which he sighs and shrugs and then pushes past us to leave the same way we just entered. Now, our friend has an unusual name, so the chances that this guy was just looking for another random guy who just happened to have the same name were pretty low. But none of us have ever seen this guy before, and I happen to know most of my said friend's family as well. When we described what the guy looked like to our friend, he didn't seem to know who this guy could have been either, and for the next few months we were too scared to go back. When we did return about 3 to 4 months later, it was the middle of summer vacation, and we thought it would be fun to climb up to the roof of the building and sunbathe. Upon climbing it, we found the roof to be rather weak and close to caving in, but something made us take the risk and dare to venture out on the roof after all. A hole in the roof which we figured would have been directly above the room we had never been in. The hole in the roof was only about the size of a football, and one of my friends came up with the idea to lower her arm down into the hole, film the room using her phone, so we could all see what the room looked like. She puts her arm down, and as she's filming, she suddenly lets out a blood-curdling scream and immediately retracts her arm, but her phone is no longer to be seen. She was certain that something had knocked it from her hand, and as we looked down through the hole, we could see her phone laying on the floor. We climbed down from the roof and entered the building, now intent on doing whatever it would take to get in the room so our friend wouldn't have to return home without a phone and have to explain what happened. About 30 minutes later, we finally managed to make a hole in the door and put our hands inside, and when we tried to use the door handle on the inside of the door now opens without any trouble. We step inside and we all stare in silence. To this day, I have no idea what this room was doing in a school building, and I sincerely hope it has never been used for what it looked like it was intended for. The room is about 4 by 4 meters, and the floor and walls are all of solid concrete. In the left corner of the room from where we entered was 2 metal bowls sitting on the floor, and at the back of the room was 5 chains dangling from the wall, 4 with equal-sized cuffs and 1 large that looked like it would fit around a neck. Needless to say, we swiftly picked up my friend's phone and immediately left the place. However, the room had us both scared and also slightly intrigued, so after some talk back and forth that same night, we decided to go back to look at it again the following day. When we returned the next day, we found the door to be locked once again, and someone had covered the hole we made in the door with a large wooden board nailed to the door. Once again, we immediately left, and after that visit, we never returned. I have no idea what we stumbled upon that day, but I am certain my days hanging out at this place is what sparked my interest in abandoned places. Today, I am an experienced member of the Urbex community and have had much more sinister experiences with places like this, so I might share with y'all some other time. Since taking up Urbex, it has been a dream of mine to go back to that school and check if that room was still there, but unfortunately the place no longer exists, and now the area is home to a thrift store. The fact that they saw that whole room and then went home, talked about it, and decided to go back is some bravery that I will never have in my entire life. I've been reading the comments, and some people are saying that it's either a gang's holding cell, a serial killer's room, or some sort of human trafficking hub, which is all insane. And for me, I personally would never step foot in an abandoned place, so I'm curious to see if this user has other stories from their other experiences that they have. As always, if you guys have any specific stories you'd like me to read, please send them my way, and I will see you in the next one.
My dog spoke to me. I need to figure out how to protect him. I was drunk the first time I heard it. At least that's what I told myself. It was just past midnight. I was slouched on my couch, TV murmuring some late-night infomercial. Baxter, my golden retriever, lay curled up beside me, his tail thumping lazily against the cushions. Good boy, I muttered, scratching behind his ears. Good boy, a voice whispered back. I sat up so fast my head spun. The house was quiet. The TV host droned on about non-stick pans. Baxter stretched, yawned, and settled back down. I stared at him. Did you just... My voice trailed off. He didn't react. I rubbed my face, let out a nervous laugh. Too much whiskey, too little sleep. That had to be it. But then it happened again. And again. At first it was a simple, almost sweet, good boy, love you, sleep tight. A whispery echo of things I'd said to him before, like a parrot. Then it got weird. I watch you sleep. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'd said that to him once as a joke, drunk or delirious. Maybe he was just repeating it back. Then one night, as I was locking up, he whispered, you should lock the door. The hairs on my arm stood up. My hands froze over the deadbolt. The door was already locked. I turned to look at him. Baxter was lying by the stairs, staring at me, mouth closed. But I swear I still heard it, faint as a breath against my ear. You should lock the door. I didn't sleep that night. I started testing it. Baxter, what's 2 + 2? I asked one morning, voice light, joking. He just wagged his tail. I chuckled. All right, buddy. Say, Baxter is the best dog. Nothing. Maybe I was losing it. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt him jump up, circle once, and then settle at my feet. His warm breath puffed against my toes. I was drifting off when the whisper came again. Don't turn around. My body stiffened. He was at my feet. His mouth wasn't near my ear. I swallowed hard. Why? I whispered. Silence. Slowly, I turned my head. Baxter was staring at me, eyes locked on something over my shoulder, unblinking. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The whisper came again, softer than ever, but clearer than before, because it doesn't like to be seen. I shot up, flicked the bedside lamp, heart hammering. Nothing was there, just my dog staring, but this time, his tail wasn't wagging. I didn't sleep. I left the lamp on, the TV humming in the background, anything to keep the silence from creeping in. Baxter stayed at the foot of my bed, curled up but rigid, ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that he wasn't really whispering, that none of this was real. But then, at 3 a.m, he growled. This was low, deep, a sound that didn't belong in his throat. He was looking at the closet. Baxter, I whispered. What is it? His growl deepened, lips pulling back over his teeth. His body trembled, but he didn't move. The closet door was open, just a crack. I was sure, I was so sure that I'd closed it. The whisper came again, but this time it wasn't soft, it was wet, sticking to the inside of my skull like breath against glass. It knows you're awake. Something shifted behind the door. A rustle, the scrape of fabric against wood. You should have locked the door. Baxter launched himself off the bed, snarling, charging the closet with more rage than I had ever seen him. The door slammed open, and for one heart-stopping second, I felt it. A shape. Baxter yelped, then whimpered, then went silent. The air in the room pressed against me, thick and heavy, a presence curling around my lungs. My legs wouldn't move, wouldn't run, wouldn't... The closet door creaked shut. Click. And just like that, it was over. Baxter lay motionless on the floor, his body limp, breath coming in shallow, rapid pants. I scrambled to him, shaking as I ran them over his fur. Baxter, buddy, are you okay? What the hell was that? He didn't look at me, didn't react, didn't whisper. He was fine, physically at least, and by the morning he was up and moving again. It's been weeks since then. Baxter still eats, still wags his tail, still follows me from room to room, but he's not the same. He won't go near the closet, won't even look at it. And at night, when he curls up my feet, I swear I can feel him trembling. Like he's listening to something that I can't hear. I don't know what was in my closet. I don't know how he started talking to me, but I know he was doing it to keep me safe. And I know that if something ever comes out of the closet again, I'll do what I can to protect it.
Let's read another scary Reddit story. Me and my daughter Olivia live in a small town in South Dakota. She goes with her father every weekend. She leaves every Friday afternoon and comes back Sunday evenings, so usually she'll be gone by the time I get home from work on Friday evenings. This particular Friday, when I pulled up to our driveway, I looked up at her window and noticed her bedroom light was still on. I figured she accidentally left it on before leaving. I walk into the house and hear movement coming from upstairs. Oh, she's still home, I whispered to myself. I went upstairs and knocked on her bedroom door and slowly opened it. Your dad isn't picking you up this weekend? I asked. No, I told him I want to stay, she said while looking down at her journal. Great, I'll make dinner for us, and we can watch a movie if you'd like. There was a long pause before she said yes. I closed her door and I thought she was acting a bit standoffish. She usually has a lot to say. I texted her dad asking if maybe they had gotten into some sort of disagreement or argument that led her to not wanting to go with him this weekend. I went downstairs and started making dinner for us. As the food was cooking, I started organizing things around the house, and I noticed Olivia's book bag and coat aren't hung where we usually hang our things when we get home. I thought maybe she just took her things up to her room. No biggie. I went into the living room and saw Olivia sitting on the couch facing away from me. I didn't even hear her coming down the stairs. She kind of startled me, especially because she's just sitting there, not on her phone like usual, and the TV's off. I walk over to the kitchen and check on the food. I yell out if she can please pick a movie out for us. I went out to check what movie she picked, and to my surprise, the TV is still off and she's still sitting there motionless. Olivia, you didn't hear me? I said. I grabbed the remote and picked out a movie. I chose The Conjuring. I grabbed our plates, and as I sat down on the couch, I heard a notification coming from my phone in the kitchen. I told her I'll be right back. I checked my phone, and it was a text from her father. After reading his message, my body went cold and stiff, literal chills. He said, "What do you mean? I picked Olivia up from school and we're grabbing dinner with her grandma right now." I feel catatonic at this point. I took a deep breath and walked slowly towards the living room, peeking in to see if it was still sitting on the couch. It was. It was just sitting there very still, looking forward but away from me. I haven't even seen Olivia's face since I've been home. Like the thing has purposely been avoiding eye contact. I went back into the kitchen. I didn't know what to do. I'm fucking terrified. I had to go back out there. My car keys are in the living room. I took a deep breath and got the courage to walk out confidently like everything was normal. It was gone. I don't know why I yelled out, "Olivia?" My stupid, confused human instincts. I heard its voice coming from upstairs, sounding just like my Olivia. It said, "Mom, I'm upstairs. I need your help," in the most sinister voice. Hell no. I grabbed my keys and ran the fuck out of the house. I was shaking so much I couldn't even put the damn keys in the ignition. God, I wish I had to push start for this very moment. As I reversed out of my driveway, I looked up at the house, and it was at Olivia's bedroom window waving at me, faceless. I couldn't even breathe. I never drove off so fast in my life. Did this really happen? Because if it did, I would be moving countries.
There's a particular set of rules that they say to follow if you ever encounter the paranormal. Like, for instance, if someone knocks on your door after midnight, you do not answer it. If the phone rings after midnight, you're not supposed to answer it. If something calls your name, it's said that if you respond, it could possess you. If you go to a funeral, and when you're leaving, you should never look back until you get home. If you were in a cemetery, and you should never step on the gravestones or in front of them. Also, if you're at a cemetery, when you drive past the cemetery gates, you should hold your breath. And when you leave a cemetery, always check your back seat. Now, when you're at home, you should never have a mirror facing the bed. And you should never have two mirrors facing each other. It's also said that you should never, ever name a spirit in your home. You should never try and communicate with it, and you should never acknowledge it. So what do you think? What rules have you heard to protect yourself or keep yourself safe from the paranormal. People who work the night shift often have supernatural encounters. Now, there was a story that came out of Arizona. There's this man named Edward. Edward said he got a job right outside of the Navajo reservation at this small gas station. Now, he said his manager, this older Native American man, he told him before he started this job, he said, there's one thing you must know. There is a set of rules that I have when you work night shift here at this gas station. He said the first rule, now this is the most important rule. When it strikes midnight, you must lock the front door and do not unlock it ever until the morning. He said the second rule, if someone comes to that door and they want to come in after midnight, do not let them in. Even if it seems like they need help, even if it seems like someone you know, do not let anybody into the gas station after midnight. And he said, because they aren't really people. He goes, Edward's like, what do you mean? And he said, I can't talk about it, but just make sure you do not let them in. And he said the third rule is you must keep the lights on all night long. Don't ever let the lights go out. And if the power goes out, you are to turn this lantern on and some of these flashlights, but do not let it get dark in here. And he said the fourth rule, you must never answer the phone after midnight. He said even if it continuously rings like someone important is trying to get a hold of you, do not pick up that phone. So Edward was like, okay, at the time he just kind of thought it was ridiculous, but he's like, all right, I'll do it. So he works at this gas station for several months, and he listens to what this man tells him. And he locks the door at night, and he keeps the lights on, and he doesn't let anyone in. Well, this one night, there was a really bad monsoon, and it was raining, and there was lightning and thunder. And it struck midnight on the clock. So he locked the door. At 12:01, he hears a knock at the door. And when he goes to the front door and he looks out the glass, he sees this woman. She is completely soaked. She's muddy. Her eyes look very wide. She looks in distress and like something is wrong. And she goes, please, please let me in. You have to let me in. And she's, crying and screaming, banging on this window. And he's like, look, I'm sorry, we're closed. Like, I cannot let you in. And she goes, no, please, you don't understand. You have to let me in. And she, banging harder and harder. And he's like, I told you we're closed. Go away. He said, that's when this woman, at the time, you could see her from this light that was outside. It was shining on her. But when she stepped outside of this light, so that's when he noticed her face started to change. She didn't look human anymore. She looked like some kind of monster. And he said she just twisted her head to the side and she took off running. And instantly he got this feeling of dread, like something was wrong. Well, he said all night long, he could hear stuff yelling at him from outside, telling him to open the door. Some of these voices sounded like his family members, friends. And he said all night long, something was harassing him. Well, that freaked him out, but he really needed this job. So he was there for a couple more months. And then he said one night, the worst thing happened. They had a blackout and the power was completely gone. And he said it was completely dark in this gas station. Now, he'd locked the doors and everything, but he remembered what that old man told him. Do not let it get dark in here. So he scrambles to find this lantern and he starts trying to get it lit. And he can hear stuff moving around. And he can see shadows of things running around the gas station. And he can hear this laughter. And he can hear banging sounds coming from outside, like something was trying to get in. Finally, he manages to get this lantern on. But all night long, once again, he could see things running around. He could hear voices calling him, telling him to come out of the light. And the next morning, he was so terrified, he quit this job. And he said that was probably the most terrifying job he had ever worked, working night shift at a small gas station outside of the Navajo reservation.
Weird spooky story time. Glitch in the Matrix Reddit stories. This is about an item duplicating, which is really cool because I just posted a duplication story. I have a silver necklace with a downward facing arrow. The chain is long, about 30 inches. I got this from Forever 21 back around 2012 when the style of length of necklace was very popular. I wear it very rarely, but it still hangs on my necklace organizer, which hangs on the wall on the side of my bed. My husband and I were on our honeymoon in Morocco last week, and we're clearing out my purse to make room for a couple of items. He opened the inner pouch and pulled out this necklace, along with a pair of silver earrings I remember getting no more than 2 years ago. I thought it was funny because I didn't really remember misplacing the necklace, but was glad he found it, and tossed it in the pouch with my other jewelry. This is not a large purse. It's about a 10 by 10 inch square with wooden sides, and about 3 to 4 inches deep. It's vintage. My mom bought it in the late 80s, and I've been carrying it around for at least 10 years. I carry it very frequently. We returned home a couple of days ago, and today I was looking for a silver necklace for my outfit. I looked on my necklace hanger and saw the arrow necklace and thought, that's weird. I don't remember unpacking my jewelry. I felt a sinking feeling and ran to unpack my suitcase, where I dumped out my jewelry pouch. The same silver arrow necklace fell out in the mix of necklaces. I wish I could attach an image here. There is a very distinct necklace. Both pendants have the same amount of tarnish. Everything looks exactly the same. It's fast fashion from over 10 years ago. If somehow had two of the same necklace, I would have noticed, especially given the 8 times I have moved since then. The purse is not secondhand. The necklace that showed up in my purse was the earrings I remember getting less than 2 years ago. WTF, what happened here? I wish so bad that you could attach photos in this Reddit thread too. Maybe I should message her and ask her to send me the photo. Let me know in the comments what you guys think this is, or if you've ever experienced a duplication in your life.
There are many people who believe that dragons are real, and there have been sightings across the United States, most recently in California. Now, the earliest report of a dragon seen in America was in 1882. A news clipping from the LA Times said that there was this train headed from Yuma to Los Angeles. And as it was going through this very remote desert area known as the Colorado Desert, they encountered what they described as a dust storm, and it was headed towards the train. Now, the passengers were panicked because they didn't know what was going on. And when this dust storm gets closer to the train, they see what appeared to them a 40-foot long snake with wings, and it is crawling on the ground at an incredible speed. It finally cuts in front of the train, but at the last second, the train nicks its tail. And it's said that this dragon reared up and it started to attack this train. And many passengers who had firearms on them began firing at this thing, and it took off into the sky. And that was known as the first sighting of a dragon in America. Now, even before then, there were Native American legends, old Cherokee legends of these dragon-like serpent creatures. But the most fascinating story that I've heard happened near Lassen Volcanic National Park. There were these 2 Boy Scouts, and they were on a campout. During the day, their troop actually discovered some elk that had been mutilated, ripped apart, and they had no clue as to what had done this. Later that night, the 2 Boy Scouts were asleep in their tent when this very large storm came about, and it was thundering and lightning. The rain was pouring down really heavy, and one of the boys had to use the bathroom. Well, he wakes up the other camper, and he tells him, I need to use the restroom, we need to go to the outhouse. So reluctantly, they went outside of the tent, and they started to make their way towards this outhouse. Well, all of a sudden, they started to hear this very loud, thunderous clap, and it was coming from the sky. But there was no thunder or lightning. What they seen was this very large serpentine creature flying in the air with large bat-like wings and a very elongated long head. And they said that the power of the wings was literally creating this wind gust that was almost pushing them over. And this thing proceeded to blow fire out of its mouth, and it lit up the entire sky. And lightning started to crash all around it. Immediately, they ran as fast as they can to the outhouse, and they stayed in there until the morning. And the next morning, when they awoke, the troop actually found some very large footprints. So, are there dragons in California?
A few years ago, my family and I went to Mexico for the first time, back in 2016. On the very first day we arrived, my mom went to visit my tia's house, my dad's sister. While she was there, my grandma's spirit attached itself to my mom and followed her back to our house. Without a doubt, every single time we go to Mexico, we experience something paranormal. The first thing I ever experienced happened one night when my sister came back from a baile around 2:30 a.m. She went straight to sleep. We shared a room at the time. My grandma's spirit was angry about that because shortly after, both my sister and I felt our feet being dragged. We woke up all scared and immediately moved our mattress outside my parents' room. The next experience is more recent. It was already late, and we were getting ready to go to El Pueblo, but I needed to shower first. The water takes a long time to heat up, so I had it running for a while. Out of nowhere, I heard a loud whisper say, "Apaga el agua," turn off the water. Girl, when I tell you I froze. I went to check who said that, but no one was there. I was completely alone in the house. All of my little hairs stood up. Some other experiences I've had include hearing footsteps dragging across the floor in the middle of the night and doorknobs moving randomly throughout the day. Another time, my mom and I heard dishes moving around in the kitchen. It was just the two of us in the house. My mom finally yelled, "Ya vete a descansar, doña, y déjanos en paz." After a while, the noises stopped. What I find so strange is that whatever this presence is, it seems to bother everyone except my dad.
These famous ghost hunters vanished, and the truth was more disturbing than any conspiracy. It was autumn 2015 in Reno, Nevada. Couple Debbie and Mark Constantino shared a very unique interest. Mark was a registered parapsychologist, which basically meant that he studied the paranormal, and Debbie was a paranormal conference lecturer. They got married in the late 80s and ended up having 3 daughters together. Now, tragically, one of their children actually did pass away when she was just a baby. This obviously deeply affected them, but they were somewhat comforted knowing that potentially their daughter could come through from the afterlife. From the outside looking in, it seemed like they were a match made in heaven, right? So why not work together too? Ghost Adventures is a very successful paranormal investigation show. It's still running to this day, and the pair became a regular feature. They would be like presenters. They were almost celebrities in their own field. But I guess with that came a kind of pressure on them to be this perfect couple. And by the sounds of it, behind the scenes, Debbie really wasn't happy. She confided in her friends like, "Mark keeps telling me to get plastic surgery, and I can't imagine how horrible that must be. Having someone that you love tell you that you're not perfect, you need to change." And this was just the tip of the iceberg. Friends would hear really horrible arguments between the pair of them. Debbie would call Mark's exes really derogatory names, and she would just be jealous and aggressive. And Mark would really put Debbie down, like already kind of insinuated, and try and make her feel insecure. They were constantly bickering in front of people, and everyone was kind of like, God, if they're doing this in front of us, what must it be like when nobody's watching? And it truly was getting worse and worse, to the point that in 2012, Mark actually rang police. He said he was terrified. His story was that Debbie was drunk and threatening to stab him. She spent the night in a cell for this, but it wouldn't be the last time. Things rumbled on beneath the surface until 2015, when the exact same thing apparently happened. Again, Mark called police saying, "She's threatening to stab me." But then something even crazier happened. Debbie had to take a protective order out against Mark and said that he basically lured her to the daughter's apartment And then him and the daughter waited and pounced on Debbie and the roommate that she showed up with. They beat her and choked her unconscious. And it does sound like it was a very callous, planned attack, some kind of sick revenge, I guess. Now, she finally filed for divorce, and people were like, okay, good. Clearly this is a very toxic and dangerous relationship. And finally, they're both going to be able to get their separate lives back on track. But late September, things would come to an end in the most devastating way. Now, the pair had broken up by this point. Debbie was living with roommates and had moved out of the family home. But suddenly, James, Debbie's roommate, was found dead. This was James Anderson. He was known as Jimmy to his friends, and he was known as being an absolutely lovely guy. And another roommate just came home that day to find him lying on the floor. At first she was like, oh my god, is he unconscious? Then she realized, oh my god, no, he's got a gunshot wound to the head. And like I said, Jimmy was a lovely guy. He had no enemies, so this made no sense. Then something clicked. Debbie was missing. Had Jimmy been caught in the crossfire? Was he just collateral damage? Was it a case of wrong place, wrong time? Because do you know who also was missing? Mark. Police were like, right, we have to locate these two. We know they're extremely toxic and dangerous together. There's a good chance that one of them is in serious danger. Now, they traced the pair's phones, and lo and behold, the phones were travelling together. And they actually ended up at the daughter's apartment. The same daughter that helped her dad beat up Debbie. SWAT teams raced over there, wasting no time. They were like, it's pretty clear he's killed the roommate and then kidnapped her. The clock was ticking. Could they get to her before it was too late? Now, they surrounded the building where the daughter's apartment was, and suddenly they heard gunshots. Someone was firing at them, and it was pretty clear who it was. Suddenly they heard the unmistakable voice of Mark. I mean, everyone knew him off the TV. He was yelling at them to stay back. It must be so scary for these SWAT teams in this situation. Like, they need to make sure that they act fast, but they also need to tread incredibly carefully. Hours went by. They tried to negotiate with him. They thought it was working. They were pleading. They were like, can we do anything to have a good resolution here? Then Mark stopped replying. They decided there's nothing else for it. We need to use explosives to get inside of there. They blew open the door, but tragically found them both dead inside. Mark and Debbie both on the floor. Mark had unalived them both. And we'll never truly know exactly what went down. Some people believe that Debbie would only have actually gone with Mark if he was holding a gun to her head, and we know he had a weapon. Some people wonder what Mark had against Jimmy, or whether he was just collateral damage.
You knew that she was most vulnerable than most. You knew that she looked at you and thought that you were her friend, and you still decided to make her your victim. The story of Gemma, I think you pronounce her last name Hayter, is probably one of my most requested cases, and it's definitely one that leaves you with a heavy heart because it's so awful for a million different reasons. 27-year-old Gemma Hayter from England was one of 3 children to her parents, and from the moment that she was born, her mother Sue knew that her daughter was different. Gemma struggled with things that other children seemed to understand naturally, and the more and more that she grew up, the more that the difference that she had with other children became more obvious. Even simple day-to-day stuff that most of us probably take for granted, like brushing your teeth, showering, getting dressed, they felt like monumental challenges for Gemma. She had, quote, a range of physical health conditions, and her appearance has been described as being suggestive of a congenital disorder, genetic syndrome, or birth defect, end quote. And the challenges that she faced weren't only mental and emotional, but they were also physical. For example, there's the fact that she stopped growing when she was 4'11". When she was, I want to say 13 or 14 years old, she reached the height of 4'11" and then just completely stopped growing. Her mom, Sue, spent so much time with doctors and nurses trying to figure out exactly what was going on, but no one could figure out what was wrong. And don't get me wrong, Gemma was a happy kid. She loved playing with her siblings and being goofy and all this stuff, and just because she was different didn't mean that she wasn't loved. She was completely adored by her entire family, but it was just a part of her that she was different, and she did face a lot of challenges because of it. When she got older, she was diagnosed with a conduct disorder, a behavioral disorder characterized by disregard for basic social standards and norms. In other words, it was hard for Gemma to make friends, to process certain information. She wasn't able to pick up on certain social clues because she didn't understand things that seemed obvious to those around her, if that makes sense. And of course, that meant that throughout her entire life, but going into her adult life, Gemma would need extra help and support. By the time that Gemma was in her early 20s, she was living by herself in a place in Rugby. I can never say say this, you guys, I'm sorry, Warwickshire. But by the sounds of it, it sounds like it was housing with some sort of support from the government because she needed it. But Gemma wanted more. She wanted the independence. She was growing up. She believed in herself. And because of that, she wrote a letter to the local government asking for help with employment. She wanted help with employment and general welfare support. Gemma was never able to find work that would correctly fit her personality, her lifestyle, what she was able and not able to do, but she did begin receiving checks from the government to help out with her finances. And her flat, her apartment where she lived, like I said, she had trouble doing the day-to-day stuff. So for a while, it seemed like she really was keeping up with everything. She was showering, she was feeding herself proper meals, cleaning up after herself, really taking care of herself, doing her best. But sooner than later, she stopped doing all of that, and all of those things were not a priority for her anymore. Her flat wasn't clean, it wasn't organized, she wasn't keeping up with things around the house or with things with herself. She wasn't eating proper meals, she was letting dirty dishes stack up, not doing laundry, not showering. And again, it wasn't because she didn't want to or she thought that she didn't need to. All of those things were such big challenges for Gemma, and it took everything in her to do the things that are deemed normal. Gemma had to put every single ounce of effort that she had in her body just to be able to keep up with the routine. But Gemma was getting lonely, even though her family was always there, willing and wanting to help. And going into her adulthood, the one thing that Gemma always craved was friendship. She was desperate for friends. She would see friend groups out in public, people her age out having fun. She couldn't understand why she didn't have that for herself because she wanted it so badly. Which is when a young woman called Chantel Booth came into her life. She started paying attention to her, and Gemma was thrilled, as was her family at the start. Her sister has said, quote, "We were chuffed to bits as she finally got a relationship with somebody. Chantel was somebody that went out, she dressed nice, and she wanted to spend time with my sister," end quote. Gemma's family knew that to be in Gemma's life, it meant having a lot of patience and a lot of care towards her. So seeing this new friend that Gemma made, it was great, but at the same time, it did make some of those people close to Jenna wonder if Chantel's intentions were pure or not. Eventually, they started spending more and more time together. Chantel introduced Gemma to all of her friends, all of her friend group, and kind of took her underneath her wing and introduced her to her entire friend group. And I think naturally as a mom, but especially being a mom to someone like Gemma, the natural thing is to want to protect your daughter. So Sue, Gemma's mom, paid extra attention to Chantel just to make sure that she really did mean well. Because remember, one of the things that Gemma struggled with the most was being able to pick up on social clues and being aware of her surroundings and being careful. Because Gemma naturally saw the best in everyone. She wanted to trust everyone, but at times that could put her in vulnerable situations. So for Sue, something did start to feel a little bit off about Chantel. However, this was the first friendship really that Gemma had built. At this point, she was 27 years old, and Sue did not want to deny Gemma of the only friendship she ever really had, because after 27 years of watching her daughter struggle to be able to connect with someone, Sue felt as if she couldn't take that away from her. And maybe Chantel did have good intentions, she had no way of knowing. Her sister Nikki has said, quote, "There was no indication of what was about to happen," end quote. Gemma thought that Chantel was her best friend. She trusted her completely. She would have done anything for her. She would have done anything for anyone in that friend group. But welcoming Chantel into her life, unfortunately, would be Gemma's biggest mistake, to no fault of her own. August 9th of 2010 was a Monday. That morning, a jogger was running along a disused railway line near the former Rugby Central station. It was a quiet area. There were abandoned train tracks, a lot of grassy areas, and he was just out for a run when he noticed something. It looked like a human body that had been discarded of in horrible, horrible condition, with clear signs that whoever this was had suffered severely. The jogger immediately called the police, and as soon as officers arrived at the scene, they knew that this was no accident. They knew it by just taking one look at that body. The injuries were horrific. There were signs of extreme violence. Someone had done this on purpose without holding back. And they soon confirmed that the body was that of 27-year-old Gemma Hayter. The police secured the crime scene and immediately began on an investigation. Her body was recovered, and a preliminary examination revealed the extent of what had been done to Gemma. She had signs of extensive blunt force trauma, multiple fractures, lacerations consisted with prolonged. She had been stabbed, punched, kicked, on a plastic bag had been placed over her head. She had essentially choked to death on her own because of the injuries inflicted onto her. The pathologist noted that her nose had been broken, her head had been shaved. The level of violence was staggering. And as you can imagine, when Gemma's family members heard the news, their hearts shattered. I mean, there isn't ever a way ever in these cases that we talk about to accurately be able to describe the level of devastation felt when you receive news of that nature. They were crushed. It was awful. Understanding there was somebody out there responsible for doing this, authorities immediately began trying to piece together Gemma's final hours. They issued public appeals. They asked for any members of the public to come forward with any information, no matter how big or small, that might be able to help them. They talked to witnesses, and then they found CCTV footage. The footage was from the night before Gemma's body was found. It showed Gemma walking through the town center with her 5 friends: Chantel Booth, Daniel Newstead, Joe Boyer, Jessica Lanus, and Duncan Edwards. Gemma and the other 5 were seen walking around just after midnight until they disappeared out of the way of any cameras, and when the group was seen walking back, caught on camera again, Gemma wasn't there. It was then when that friend group was officially on police's radar, and they brought all 5 of them in for questioning. They looked through text messages, they looked through phone records, starting to put pieces of the puzzle together. But when authorities got a search warrant for Chantel's flat, and when they got confirmation that Gemma had been there the night that she lost her life, everything started coming together, and it started to paint a very, very dark picture of Gemma's final hours. The night before her body was found, Gemma had gone over to Chantel's flat to grab something that she left there, and when she got there, Jessica, one of the other girls in the friend group, was also there, along with the rest of them. Jessica, I guess, was mad at Gemma from a comment that she had made the night before. It was apparently supposed to be a joke, but Jessica took it the wrong way. And it was that night in Chantel's flat that they all ambushed Gemma and put her through an unimaginable amount of pain. They all just came onto her with their fists, with a mop, with different items in the house, using them to hurt her. They broke her nose, they forced her to drink urine, they threw her around every single wall and any hard surface in the house, really. They bounced her head on the ground, they jumped on top of her, and some reports state that she was even tied up and left in the bathroom for a long period of time, for hours. They also placed tape over her mouth to stop her from screaming, and they threw her phone battery down the toilet so she could not call for help. Afterwards, the group then told her that they would walk her home. And again, remember that Gemma had a hard time socially understanding what was going on and understanding why things were happening. She struggled with that already, so it's hard to imagine that she would have been able to process exactly what was happening to her, let alone understand it. So when they offered to walk her home, she agreed, and that's when the group was seen on CCTV footage, but as we know, they were never going to walk her home. In regards to that CCTV footage, Gemma's sister Nikki has said, quote, "At one point, Gemma looks at the camera, and that will always haunt me. To watch your little sister walking, knowing that she is about to die, is horrendous," end quote. The group led Gemma to a secluded area near those railroad tracks where they spent hours doing unspeakable things to her. They put a bag over her head and tied it. They used a sharp weapon on the back of her head, all of them taking turns to do different kinds of things, but the worst things possible. To Gemma, who was 1, defenseless, and 2, supposedly their friend. And then they left her there and they went back to their flats as if nothing ever happened. On August 11th of 2010, police made their first arrest in connection to Gemma's case. First, they arrested 3 of them. Eventually, they arrested the other 2. And as the investigation continued, more and more information just solidified what investigators already knew, that this group of people, they were never Gemma's friends. All they were doing was using her to their advantage. For the last 18 months, the group was using Gemma to fund their lifestyle, basically. You know how I said that Gemma had been receiving checks from the government? Well, her friends would make sure to be there the day that Gemma was receiving a check, and then they would hang out with her, when in reality, all they were doing was using her money for whatever they wanted to do. They would also tell Gemma that they needed help in hiding presents for their other friends, when in reality, the presents were substances, illegal substances, that Gemma would hide in her apartment for them. They forced Gemma to shoplift and steal for them. They stole so many things from her and her flat. They were horrible, the worst of the worst. And I guess when they thought that she was no longer beneficial to them, they decided to get rid of her. Her sister has said, quote, "Gemma didn't understand. She proved that the night that she died, after everything they did to her, she still followed them home. She just followed Chantel like a little puppy," end quote. The trial began June 8th of 2011, and it lasted 7 weeks. All 5 of them pled not guilty. It was awful for Gemma's family having to sit in that courtroom and listen to what was done to their loved one in detail. Her sister said that the first day of the trial was the worst day of her entire life, having to sit there and hear the lawyers list off every single injury that Gemma endured at the hands of the people that she thought were her friends. Ultimately, 3 out of the 5 were found guilty for murder. Chantel Booth was sentenced to life with a minimum of 21 years before she's eligible for parole. 20-year-old Daniel Newstead was Chantel's boyfriend. He was sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years before being eligible for parole. 18-year-old Joe Boyer was sentenced to life with a minimum of 18 years before being eligible for parole. The other 2 were found guilty of manslaughter. 19-year-old Jessica Lanus was sentenced to 13 years, and Duncan Edwards, 19 years old, was sentenced to 15 years. Gemma Hayter lived a short short 27 years on this earth, but she will forever be remembered by all of those who loved her, and her family has said that the sentencings did bring them some sort of closure. Her mom, Sue, says that although Gemma's life wasn't the easiest, she made a lot of good memories, and those memories are what will help her mom keep her alive in her heart. But that is all I have for today. Thank you for spending time with me and for listening to Gemma's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
In 2013, a Reddit user was having a hard time getting to sleep, and then they would wake up in the middle of the night and their sleep was just generally broken, and so they decided they would look into downloading a sleep app. She wound up settling on a particular app called Sleep as Android because not only would it give her a whole bunch of information about her night's sleep, but it also had a constant recording going over the course of the night, and anytime it picked up an anomaly in sound, like snoring or talking in your sleep, they would record it and then clip it and provide it to you the next morning and show you these highlights of your sleeping from the night before. So she downloads the app, and starting on October 1st, 2013, she begins dutifully turning this thing on before she goes to bed, and then the next day she would get up, she'd review her sleep, she'd read all the graphs, she'd get all the reports. But the thing she wound up being the most interested in was this little timeline of all these instances where she would snore or make a funny sound. And it was just interesting because you don't get to listen to yourself sleep because, well, you're sleeping. But starting in November, so a month after downloading it, she started noticing that the app was picking up this strange clicking sound. It didn't have a consistent cadence to it. It almost sounded like someone had dropped something on the ground, but it was really difficult to discern it as something specific in the room. And so she assumed it had to be like the string on the fan, because some nights her fan was on, some nights it was off. And when it was swinging, maybe it was rattling the fan and the chain was bumping into the side of the frame, or it was just something else in her room. It didn't strike her as a very meaningful sound, but she was at least starting to be aware of the sound. Over the next couple of weeks, she heard the sound a couple more times, not while she was sleeping, just the next morning when she would see it on her app. And she actually started trying to recreate the sound by turning on the fan and actually shaking the fan to try to get the string to bounce up against the side in hopes that that would be the sound. But despite listening really intently for the sound, she just could not duplicate it and just didn't know where it was coming from. But again, she's not concerned, she's just a little bit perplexed. Then on December 30th, 2013, so this is about 3 months after downloading it, she's had about a month and a half of hearing these clicking sounds. She wakes up and she sees on her app's timeline there's a whole bunch of audio recordings, but there's one particularly loud recording that took place at 2:04 a.m. earlier that morning. She loads it up and she starts hearing those clicking sounds that she had grown accustomed to hearing, but then she hears herself sit up in the bed and say, "What are you doing?" And then there's a pause, and then a male voice says back to her, "Nothing." And then you hear some more clicking, and you hear that same voice say, "That's them." And so right after hearing this recording, the Reddit user is like, "Oh my God, was someone in my house?" And she runs around the house, makes sure nobody else is there. All the doors are locked, all the windows are locked. There's no sign that anybody was in the house. Nothing's missing, at least nothing she can tell. The Reddit user's friend suggested, why don't you post it to Reddit and see if anybody can give you some insight into what this was. Out of the thousands of comments on there that were all over the map for what this could be, there was a speech expert that actually got in touch with the Reddit user and went through the audio with her and then had her send recordings to him as well as her son to try to see if it would be possible for her to make the voice. And the speech expert determined that it would be impossible for her or her son to have made the voice in the room, meaning someone else was in the room with her in the middle of the night. After this particular night, she never picked up another voice in her room with her, but she did continue to hear that clicking sound that she began to associate with whoever this person was that was in the room with her, and so she and her son ultimately moved. Here is the audio recording.
What are you doing?
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
Every single state in the US has had at least one serial killer, if not multiple. And today I'm going to tell you guys about one of the worst serial killers from Iowa. And actually I'm going to be telling you guys about two people today. So I'm going to be telling you about Dustin Honkin, and he was born in Britt, Iowa. His father was allegedly very neglectful and an alcoholic, and Dustin kind of grew up like with a hard life with him before his father eventually got arrested for robbing a bunch of banks. So he did not have the easiest childhood, but As he grew up, he was smart, he was proficient in math and science and writing, even earned a scholarship to the North Iowa Area Community College, and that's a pretty big deal. Like, he was a very smart kid. And in 1991, he starts going to that college, and he had like this big dream of wanting to become a pharmaceutical lawyer. So he was shooting very, very high. However, he starts at college, he starts getting into drugs, he starts doing some different recreational things, and then steps it up to like some pretty hardcore things. While he's starting to do all these drugs, he's also taking a bunch of science classes because he wants to do stuff with pharmaceutical law. So he's taking chemistry, and he ends up doing pretty well in that class. And he decides that instead of continuing with his degree and career, he decides that he wants to take a route that he feels is easier. He wants to take his chemistry knowledge and go create drugs himself. And I'm not talking about growing a couple little things, I'm talking about hardcore drugs. So he starts creating and selling all of these different things. He starts making money off of it, and he even gets his best friend, and this is a guy named Tim Cutcomp, to help him with all of his different creations. They ended up making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of this, which is just insanity. They mainly sold to two different dealers. They sold to a bunch of different people, but there's two that like they relied on, and their names were Terry DeGoose and Greg Nicholson. So they sold through them quite a bit, and they brought in quite a bit of money. They see a lot of what they're doing. They all know that they're all doing illegal activity together. On one of the drug runs specifically, Dustin ends up meeting a woman named Angela Johnson, and he instantly kind of likes her, but she's actually the girlfriend of Terry. It isn't until a little while later that she ends up reaching out to Dustin and saying like, hey, when you bring the drugs to Terry, he ends up using so much of them for himself that he's losing you money, and he's not a good drug dealer. You should just go through me. And then they start a romantic relationship together. So she basically backstabs her boyfriend, takes his customers basically, and then goes and has a relationship with them. So now Dustin and Angela are together, and she ends up basically being his drug dealer for him, and they're just making an insane amount of money off of these drugs. They also end up getting pregnant, and Angela has Dustin's child. After that, in March of 1993, Dustin and Tim are arrested on federal drug trafficking charges. They get caught for something. And as he is prepping for trial, Dustin learns through some of the papers that have been filed by the prosecution that Greg Nicholson was going to be a witness against him, so he was going to be a witness for the prosecution on this trial. And obviously Dustin feels very betrayed by that. He starts to threaten Greg and his family, and he says that he could end him at any time. And eventually, while he's waiting for this trial, Dustin gets out on bond, which is very scary, and he says he is going to find Greg and make him pay. He and Angela start looking for Greg, and eventually they end up finding him, and on July 24th of 1993, Angela goes up to his house pretending to be a saleswoman, and when he opens the door, they force their way in and they attack him. Inside, they not only find Greg, but they also find his new girlfriend. She was 37-year-old Lori Ann Duncan, and her two daughters. They forced Greg to record a statement saying that Dustin was innocent and that he was lying to the prosecution about what he was saying about Dustin. After making him record that, they bound and gagged Greg and his girlfriend Lori, and Angela took the two daughters, 10-year-old Candace Duncan and 6-year-old Amber Duncan, out to the car and said that they were going on a fun surprise trip. However, Dustin forced the family into the car at gunpoint and drove to the woods. He made the parents get out first. They stood over shallow holes in the ground that he had dug as shallow graves, and he executed them both, and then went back to the car and did the same with both of the little girls. They drove away, and they took the recording that Greg had made to Dustin's attorney saying Dustin was innocent. And meanwhile, the prosecution is now wondering what happened to their witness because he's now just vanished along with his girlfriend and her kids. They're scrambling because if they don't have a witness, they don't have a case against Dustin. And so when they can't find Greg, they decide to turn to Terry, the other drug dealer that was Angela's ex-boyfriend. But as soon as he's going to be a witness for them, suddenly on November 5th, Terry also just disappears. We end up learning that the night before, he had dropped his daughter off at his mom's house, and then he was supposed to go meet Angela at a country club because she said she wanted to rekindle the romance. And so she lured him to this country club and then said, like, do you want to go for a drive? Got him in the car and drove him to an abandoned cabin where Dustin was secretly waiting. When he got out of the car, Dustin attacked him, he beat him, he shot and killed him, and then buried his body. So now, the prosecution once again is wondering what happened to their witness. Both of their witnesses have just vanished, and they don't have anyone else. And so they keep trying to go to trial. They try to get him convicted, but it doesn't work. So Dustin is free. He ends up going back to manufacturing and selling drugs. And in 1995, he gets a man named Dan Cobain to start working for him. However, somehow, Dan ends up getting to be a police informant, and Dustin has no idea. and he ends up giving police enough to get a search warrant. And on February 7th of 1996, officers end up executing that search warrant. They go into Dustin's house, they discover his lab, chemicals, equipment, books, notes, including like detailed notes on how he's manufacturing all these things. They arrest Dustin and Tim, and while they're awaiting that trial, he is released on bond, and during this time, he's not only plotting to kill Dan, he also wants to kill multiple of the police officers that were involved in his arrest, and then he has a couple chemists that he wants to kill because they somehow led him astray with the drug making, and then he wants to destroy all evidence against him. But then, Tim, his co-manufacturer, basically, his best friend, decides he no longer trusts Dustin. He's pretty sure that Dustin is the reason that Terry and Greg just disappeared, and so he decides to also become a police informant. He secretly wears a wire and gets Dustin on a recording implying that he killed them. And when Tim asked Dustin on this recording if killing people bothered him, Dustin replied, quote, "Nope, never think about it, never. Never dream about it, never nothing. Thought I'd have nightmares," end quote. So he just has zero remorse for all these people he killed, including 2 children. He also recorded him saying that Dan was a rat and that he would have no problem killing him no matter what. And he said, quote, "I've climbed far bigger hills than that little hill. Even if I'm in prison for 15 years, whatever. When I get out, he's still dead," end quote. So obviously Tim takes this to the police, and Dustin's bond is revoked and he is now in prison. And Dustin is very angry about this. He's also very pissed at Tim, obviously. His lifelong friend, business partner, basically just turned on him. And so he wants to get revenge on him as well. And he makes a plan with an inmate to break the inmate out of the jail. And he gives that guy Tim's address, and he says like he wants him to go kill him. Fortunately, when they're trying to break out, the guards catch them and foil their plan, and he never kills Tim. But he did try multiple times while in prison. This is when he decides he's going to kill not only the witnesses, but the police officers and the federal prosecutor who put him there. And he and other inmates start practicing how to get out of handcuffs and how to disarm guards with their weapons because they all want to like plan this escape. So it's just getting like even more dangerous. Dustin is getting even more reckless, and he doesn't care who he kills so long as he gets to be free. Up until this point, Angela has not been involved in really any legal stuff. She's seemingly not involved, she's taking care of their kids. But in 2000, her friend comes forward saying she saw a pistol in Angela's closet and then it disappeared. She thinks it was used to help Dustin kill some of the witnesses. And police end up arresting her, and while she's arrested, she's being held in prison next to a guy named Robert Gene McNeese, who was being held in prison for life for different fraud charges. She and Robert become friends. They start passing notes, they start talking, they start telling each other about their lives. However, she doesn't know that Robert's actually an informant for the prison. She admits to him that she helped kill multiple different people, and she even draws a map, which why would you put that on paper? I mean, I'm not complaining because it ends up being part of what gets her and him charged, but why would you draw that on paper for someone to find? But she draws a map of where the bodies are being hidden. Robert is like, "Thank you so much," and takes it to the police. And when Angela finds out that she was basically betrayed by this guy that she thought was her friend, she tries to end her life, but she is unsuccessful. So after this, Angela and Dustin are now charged with 5 murders, and by 2004, Dustin was convicted of all 17 counts that were being charged against him, including 5 murder charges, and eventually he was sentenced to death, and in 2020, he was executed via lethal injection. Angela was also found guilty on 4 counts of murder. Her defense claims she was confused and didn't know that Dustin was going to kill people, and she was innocent, and they tried to play that like kind of victim card, but it didn't work. She still was charged with 4 counts, and she got sentenced to death, and she is still alive and still serving out her sentence in prison.
I feel like it's been a while since I've done these, so let's do a quick little refresher. These are a list of things that you should never do late at night. Number 1, answer if somebody calls your name, and you know there's no reason why anybody should be calling your name late at night. By you answering your name, you're essentially welcoming whatever sort of entity and spirit is trying to get your attention. Sometimes it's not even a spirit, sometimes it's a... Number 2 is whistling in your house when it's late at night. According to many traditions, you whistling in your house is you calling any sort of wandering spirits that may be around the area. They don't necessarily have to be in your house. If they're near your house and they hear the whistling, to them it's like a beacon, like a welcome sign. Like they're gonna want to come in and they're gonna mess with you. Number 3 is sleeping with your feet uncovered. It is not just like an urban legend or something like your parents told you to like scare you or te van a jalar la pata sort of situation. You sleeping with your feet uncovered, it's you telling whatever's around, like, hey, I'm a free target, like, come at me. I guarantee that you will feel something at least tugging at your feet. And 4, if you happen to feel like there's something near you or just surrounding you, you telling it to show itself. You have no idea what you are welcoming into your space and what is going to actually show itself. Pray. Stay prayed up. And if you heard something late at night, you definitely didn't. I've gotten out of a lot of like very sticky situations by pretending that I didn't see or hear anything. Let me know if you guys want a part 2.
I remember learning about this story this movie is based on when I was just little. It scared the absolute crap out of me, so let's talk about it. The movie A Haunting in Connecticut was based on a allegedly true story. It revolves the Snedeker family, and in 1986 they were having a really rough time of things. Alan, who was the father, he was struggling with alcoholism, and Carmen, who was the mother, was in between jobs. On top of all of that, their oldest son was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Their son obviously had to go cancer treatments. This was starting to weigh heavily on them as they had to travel really long to get there. So finally, the family decided to look into moving closer to where his doctors were. They found this home that was reasonably priced. It was in their budget and they thought that it would be perfect. But little did they know this was actually a funeral home at one point. Soon after they moved in, they found photos of it being a funeral home. They also found a coffin, some headstones, and they even found out that there were certain people who were buried on the property. Now, right off the bat, the family was really concerned about what was going to happen there, but they didn't have a lot of money at this time, so they didn't have the option to move again. The paranormal activity started really slow. At first, they just started hearing random noises or like strange noises throughout the house. This would happen during the day as well as at night. But it would sound like there were chains rattling or people scratching on the walls. That would be terrifying. But eventually the paranormal activity started getting worse. The children started seeing actual spirits walking around the house, or at least they claimed to. And on top of that, their oldest son, who was going through chemo treatments, started having very strange behavior. He was getting aggressive, he was very dark, everything was just seemingly falling apart. Carmen was frequently the target of these attacks. She said that one day when she was taking a shower, the shower curtain started to like cling to her and wrapped around her like somebody was trying to choke her. Carmen's niece Tammy also moved into the house with the family. She said that she was also attacked. Tammy said that she was attacked multiple times, and on top of that, she kept hearing people whispering in her ears. She also saw these dark figures. The family ended up calling Ed and Lorraine Warren to come help them. Ed and Lorraine did perform a cleansing of the house, but this didn't seem to help at all. So they would have another paranormal group come in and investigate, and allegedly, this group didn't even last a night before they fled the house. Eventually, Ed and Lorraine Warren would perform an exorcism on the house, and apparently it helped. I don't know. The Snedeker family eventually did move out of this house. Another family moved in, but they wanted to remain anonymous, but they have said that they have not experienced any paranormal activity since. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think the house was actually haunted, or was it all just a hoax? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
We've all seen those photos, like where you take a picture of fire, like a bonfire, and you see a ghost in it or a face or something like that. But this one's a little different. It's a lot more clear and definitely hard to explain. So this photo was sent to me. Apparently this house was going up in flames, obviously. They took a photo of it, and the great-grandmother showed up like in the kitchen area in the photo, just looking like her normal self. So I'm going to show it to you, and then you let me know what you think.
Here's the photo. Pause it. See if you can find her. Okay, you still can't find her? Here, let me help you.
Ta-da! There she is. Now, a lot of people may want to question that, which is fine. It's fine to question stuff. And they said that when they posted this like on other sites, that people were like, oh, that's just twisted wood. That's just, you know, like a pareidolia or something like that, which if you don't know what pareidolia is, it's when you see a face and things that aren't really there. Like you want to see your dead grandma washing dishes so bad in this burning house that your mind creates it, which we can all agree that that's not what's happening here. She clearly, there's her face, her hair's in a bun, her arms are like washing dishes or preparing a meal of some sort. But also, a thing I want to add to this is, who's that? This one right here. Who is that? Did you see that one? So, what do you think? I can't wait to hear it.
As somebody that loves true crime and really anything to do with it, I just feel like the Lizzie Borden like murder house is like, that shouldn't be a thing. And when I say it shouldn't be a thing, I mean like people fantasize the murder and like glorify it. Like, why do they have pictures of the stepmom and the father being unalived, and they're using the pictures like it's a decoration? And then on top of that, Not only that, they have mannequins mimicking how they were found when they were found unalived. They got like the bloody axe that was used there. And it's just like people are going there. They want to go to have fun and to have that thrill and be like, oh yeah, I was in this murder house and I seen the real pictures and this and that. They're like, I love true crime. Don't get me wrong, but like that's weird if you ask me. That's really weird because just imagine somebody in your family being unalived and the house is up for you to spend the night and they get to see how your family member looked when they were unalived and all the blood, how everything looked, how their skull looks, using it as a display, like. And then for them to sit there and say that Lizzie did it and then later on not be able to prove it, it's just like, dumb people ain't get their justice, number one, and number two, y'all glorifying the fact that they're not even here anymore.
A 91-year-old woman sadistically tortured to death in her own home. This case is as horrific as it sounds, so please be warned before watching. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Nellie Hawkut. In mid-January 2003, neighbours on the Williamsbridge neighbourhood in the Bronx, New York, noticed something that was out of the ordinary and they started to grow concerned. Their 91-year-old neighbour Nellie hadn't pulled her car off her driveway into her garage for a couple of days or emptied her letterbox. Her post was piling up and both of these things were completely out of the ordinary. When no one was able to contact or get in touch or set eyes on Nellie, the neighbours contacted the police asking them to go in and check on her. The officers would soon arrive to Nellie's home and what they would discover was the most traumatic scene. Nellie was originally from Atlanta, Georgia, however at some point in her life moved from the south over to the Bronx in New York where she at one point was a Girl Scouts leader. Nellie was the staple, the backbone of her neighbourhood. She was the type of person who would bring your bins out for you, put them back in, she would collect your post for you. She was everyone's nana. People would always go to her for advice and for guidance, and she was the biggest cheerleader to all of the children in the neighbourhood, all of which were her grandchildren. Not really, but like they were. She was this grandmother figure and she treated all of the children with love like she would her own grandchildren. She would make sure that the children were focusing on their education, she taught them proper etiquette. She was very well known for her generosity, kindness and her activism. Despite her age being 91 years old, Nellie was still very independent. She looked after herself, she was self-sufficient and would drive herself to church every single Sunday. When the officers walked into her house, they would find Nellie bound to a chair with telephone cord and duct tape. She had a rag shoved into her mouth and a plastic bag over her head. The bag was fastened tightly to her head with one of her own scarves. It was later determined that she had suffocated to death, this plastic bag being put over her head while she was still alive. Surrounding the chair that Nellie was found in, there was bottles of alcohol, and later testing would show that Nellie had ingested red wine, scotch and rubbing alcohol, all of which were forced into her mouth, and they were able to tell this because she had lacerations on her tongue. Bruising on Nellie's legs showed that she had tried to fight off her attacker, but she was overpowered. At the scene, it was determined that there was no sign of forced entry. All of the items that were used for the torture and the killing were from inside of Nellie's house, so the plastic bag and the telephone cord, for example. So the killer hadn't come prepared. Had the killer arrived to Nellie's house with the intention of committing murder, or was this just a crime of opportunity? The crime scene investigators were able to lift some foreign fingerprints that they found interesting from inside of Nellie's house, and they would use this to compare to people to rule them out as suspects. An investigation into the torture and murder of Nellie Hawkut ensued, and the investigators spoke to everyone that they could. Nellie's entire family, extended family, boyfriends, friends. They were at one point even suspicious about Nellie's postman, but none of their fingerprints matched what they discovered inside of Nellie's house. From speaking to people, they would learn that she was very security conscious and she wouldn't let just anyone into her house, so she must have known her killer. After conducting all of these interviews and doing what they could, with nothing else to go off, the investigation into Nellie's murder went cold. Nellie's family and detectives had to wait 4 agonizingly long years until a tip finally came in, giving the investigators their big break. A woman named Larissa had approached the police and told them that she knew of 2 girls. These 2 girls had confided in her that they had committed a murder of an elderly woman in the Bronx, and it was Nellie. Larissa named both of the girls as Sparkle Daniel and Nadine Panton. Larissa had known about their involvement, I'm not sure how long for, but she was only coming forward to the police at this stage because she and Sparkle were in an argument, a fight over a man. So this was more like a revenge report. I guess Larissa thought if Sparkle went to prison, she could have that man all to herself. Sparkle was arrested in 2007, and when her fingerprints were compared to what was left behind in Nellie's house, they were a match. She confessed that yes, she was in the house that day and she was there when the torture and murder took place, but it was all Nadine and she was terrified of Nadine. Nadine had then made threats towards her. When questioned, Nadine wouldn't deny her involvement in the murder, but she tried to pin most of the blame on Sparkle. So what happened on the day of the murder? It was the 10th of January 2003 and Nellie had been out to get a little bit of food shopping. She was carrying her shopping bags back into the house when Sparkle offered to help her. She was 17 at the time and 26-year-old Nadine was also with her. The girls would help Nellie into the house with the shopping bags, and like I said earlier, Nellie was very security conscious. But she knew Sparkle. She was actually really close with Sparkle's auntie, and so she was very familiar with Sparkle, and Sparkle was someone that she trusted. Once the girls were inside of Nellie's house, Sparkle asked if she could use Nellie's phone to ring her auntie, and Nellie said, of course. When she couldn't get through to her auntie, however, this is when Sparkle said that Nadine turned around and said that they were going to rob Nellie. And so they began rummaging around Nellie's house, her bag, her purse, and it was only partway through that they had the realization, Nellie knows who we are. She knew their names and their faces, and she could and likely would report them to the police and get them arrested. But they weren't going to let that happen. And that is when they sadistically tortured and murdered 91-year-old Nellie, forcing alcohol down her throat, binding her to a chair, stuffing her mouth with a rag, and suffocating her with a plastic bag. Sparkle Daniel and Nadine Panton were both convicted for the charges brought against them for Nellie's murder. Sparkle was handed a sentence of 25 years imprisonment, and Nadine was handed a sentence of 25 to life.